More heavily armored officers arrive, but no one gives the order to go in. Then suddenly a new round of gunfire. But after those gunshots, Arredondo again tries to talk with the shooter.
Can you hear me, sir?
And again, minutes later.
Sir, if you can hear me, please put your firearm down, sir. We don't want anybody else hurt.
I know.
That's what we're doing. We're trying to get him out.
After no response, police still stand around without much urgency. Over the course of the next nearly 30 minutes, we see more officers arrive.
So a lot came out over the weekend. A big report looking into the response, or basically non-response, from law enforcement in that Uvalde, the devastating shooting, as well as new body cam footage. And look, I think that there's a lot there that we gotta dive into. There's also some stuff baked into it that I think people are missing, and I wanna reiterate. So we're gonna get to that too. But overall, the bottom line is nearly 400 local, state, and federal law enforcement officers were at the scene that day, including 91 state troopers, none of whom moved to lead the response. 400 people with, I think it's safe to say, the equipment, the training, and the obligation to do something. And there's certainly, when you watch the video, there are cops there saying, why aren't we going in? Why aren't we doing so? There were people there who wanted to act, but nobody, none of the many people who could have taken control of the situation chose to do so, Arredondo being, I think, at the top of that list. And by the way, he had written the active shooter response plan for that school district, as Pete Arredondo. He'd assigned himself as incident commander, but did not follow the protocol that he himself had set up. He was on the site, you saw him in the video trying to, I guess, talk down the shooter. At one point, someone is screaming to the shooter. This can be peaceful. At that point, many people had already died, of course. But anyway, while this report that came out, it doesn't make clear if lives could have been saved with a swifter response. It left open the possibility. Well, isn't that open-minded of the report? See, it's the report that did it. No human was involved. The report coalesced from the cosmic dust of creation. And so no one is responsible for the proclamations of the report, just the paper itself. But there's a lot more bad stuff here. Francesca, think of what we found out over the weekend.
I mean, I definitely think that it's good. The report basically blamed all law enforcement, including, the Customs and Border Patrol folks that were on the scene. Pretty much everyone. There's 400 of you, and none of y'all in all of your infinite training and weaponry decide that you need to go in right now. 78 minutes later is when you go in. It's insane. Arredondo in that clip is saying, sir, we don't want any more violence. This is a madman. This is someone who's gone into a school and has opened fire. You already know they crashed their car, right? So oh no, I mean, maybe it's like a really level-headed mass shooter. You know those? You know those ones? No, man, this is not a heist. We're not at a bank here. We're in a school, and you can hear, I'm sorry, you guys, you can hear children screaming. We can't, they can't. Yeah. They know there are people injured there, and they know there are people who are dead, right? And so the decision was, are they dead, or are they kind of dead? And they decided they're dead. So we're not gonna go, it's just too late. It's too late. Yeah, that's what it was. And Arredondo, by the way, before we move on, he was about to be on city council. So this is a guy who was not thinking about his own protocol. He was thinking about his political career. And that's just so fitting.
His eyes are cast forward to city council, then maybe mayor, governor someday, President Arredondo, so that he could fail hundreds of millions of people rather than that specific community.
I hear that's how you do it, John.
That's how you do it. So yeah, anyway, I'm glad that look, the report makes pretty clear how bad this was. It does pull its punches needlessly, I think in some places. Like for instance, I'm gonna go ahead to graphic 5. Other than the attacker, this report did not find any villains in the course of its investigation. There's no one to whom we can attribute malice or ill motives. Instead, we found systemic failures and egregious poor decision making. So for instance, we're pointing out, the cops and all that, the army of law enforcement, the army of guns that they had. But they also cite a culture of non-compliance from school administrators who are aware of unsafe practices, such as teachers routinely leaving doors unlocked or propping them open, and the shortage of keys for interior and exterior entrances. Poor internet and mobile coverage interfered with teachers receiving lockdown notifications and being able to report the attack to local police. Yeah, that is interesting. The most interesting thing about it is that it's effing like irrelevant. He's gonna get in. The locked door isn't gonna stop the guy with the AR. Oh, the teachers didn't find out about the lockdown. Well, except for the notifications, they got the rapid fire notifications as each bullet left the chamber of the rifle. I think that was their notification. Being able to report the attack to local police. No. The police were there relatively fast. That's kind of part of the issue, that they didn't act. No, this is not on the Wi-Fi, it's not on the teachers, it's not on the doors, okay? And I wanna go to my main point here, because when this report comes out saying hundreds of cops, they all failed, and we rightfully get incensed. Why weren't they braver? Why wasn't their organization? Why didn't they rush in? And every one of those impulses is right to have. It is your ethical obligation to be frustrated by those things. But like I said on day one, the solution to the problem wasn't a good apple. The solution to the problem wasn't Arredondo saying, let's go in there, storm the barricade, because you know what you would have had, even if they'd done that in minute 3, you would have potentially saved some lives, and that would be a good thing. But you know what else you would have had? A whole bunch of dead people, because they were already dead, okay? Moving in there solves some of the needless additional problems. It doesn't solve the fundamental problem, which is that someone could go to a store and buy a gun capable of killing tons of people in a very short period of time. That's the problem. And no amount of rapid response or SWAT or extra training or a faster alert system is going to stop that fundamental problem. And my fear is that when people see this report, they say, oh, it's the cops. They need better training. They need a better chain of command. No, that'll solve the cops' problem. It won't solve America's problem, which is the access to the weaponry in the first place.
Absolutely, and you can see that because there are 400 of them, and it's not just chain of command, you guys. They're scared. The cops are scared, and this is not the first mass shooting where cops have hesitated. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, also a police officer, was on scene, hesitated, did not want to go in. Until the police join the majority of people in this country to advocate for tougher gun safety laws and for actually getting assault weapons off the streets, we're all going to be victimized. And they know it more than anyone else. Why are they cowering in fear when they know it's one person? They already know it's one person. They already know, even in their best scenario, which is a gunman is barricaded by himself, or at least by himself, the only person who's alive by himself, which was maybe not even how did they know? How did they know?
Exactly.
But anyway, even if we were to assume that, they were still afraid to go in. Why? Because nobody wants to die. Because everyone understands how powerful an AR-15 is. Everyone understands these kinds of weapons. And yeah, it's scary as hell. Now, you can say that is your training, that is your job. I would agree with that. But I'd also say that maybe no one should be put in that position where they're staring down the barrel of a high-powered semi-automatic weapon of war, like this.
Yeah, and I think that's borne out by the fact that you'll notice that the conversation around Uvalde is that the cops didn't rush in. But that's not the conversation in a lot of these situations. I mean, Stoneman Douglas had a similar sort of thing, a bit with a security guard, but that wasn't the conversation around some of these others, because in some of the other of the many school shootings that we've had in America, there doesn't appear to be evidence that the cops waited. You had brave cops who rushed in, doing things that most of us can't imagine doing and in all likelihood couldn't do. They were brave. And in those cases, you still had tons of people dead. That is the proof of this. Them rushing in and shooting the shooter, that is good once we've already had the inevitable outcome of our completely non-existent gun policy here in America. That's a solution to the problem we created, okay? But the actual solution means that you don't have to roll the dice on the bravery of an individual cop.
Yeah.
And if I could just briefly go ahead. The police chief is on leave. We'll see what ends up happening with that. All of the, not just the failure on that day, but all the lies about the attempted cover up, even that footage we were showing you. The mayor had to like unilaterally release that and might get in trouble because of it. Like they're still trying to cover it up.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.